While the G.I. Joe team is pretty monolithic in that very few agents work outside of Uncle Sam's employ, Cobra is a lot more diverse. Now obviously there is Cobra Command itself, full of different Vipers, soldiers, and officers, and led by the eponymous Cobra Commander, his first Lieutenant Baroness, and their arms dealer buddy Destro, the latter of which would form his own splinter group, the Iron Grenadiers. However, Cobra has tons of individual cells, mercenaries, and agents under their employ. Now obviously there are the one-off Soldiers of Fortune and Dogs of War that Cobra hires, like Major Blood, Firefly, and Quinn from the Marvel Comics. But there are other sub-factions and subgroups within the Cobra umbrella. There's the Headhunters, the drug-dealing task force that are separate but are definitely absorbed by Cobra later on. Then of course the Eco Warriors, led by Cesspool, and then tons and tons of different ninja and Yakuza clans. But not all these groups are glamorous. Beyond soldiers, operators, and mercenaries, sometimes you need someone deep in the nitty-gritty. I mean, let's face it, Baroness and Cobra Commander are too pretty to be on the city streets getting their hands dirty with theft, vandalism, and other petty crimes. And that is where the Dreadnoks come into play. Introduced into the G.I. Joe Real American Hero toy line and mythos in 1985, the Dreadnoks are a motorcycle gang consisting of the Hellraisers and Heartbreakers, Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch, a group of one-percenters that not even the pagans or the gypsy jokers want to be associated with. It may be a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, so be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, because PDX Toy Collective is the only toy YouTuber on the highway to hell. Mostly because I just listen to a lot of AC/DC.
AC/DC. Some people say that stands for Antichrist Devil's Child. Does it?
It came from the back of my sister's sewing machine.
Nothing but low-lives, bikers, and thugs. The Dreadnoks do dirty deeds because they're dirt cheap. These dregs of society are so low on the Cobra totem pole they gotta look up just to look down. Now, I am looking at all three 1985 Dreadnoks today, and while it would be funny to review them all at once, we're not gonna do that. Instead, we'll choose one and go from there. But who shall we choose? Well, using my mystical, otherworldly powers, we shall decide thusly. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a sailor by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. My mother told me to pick the very best one, and you are it. Beginning with Torch, while I'd argue he is the most basic of the crew, he is the quintessential Dreadnok. He's a rude, crude biker with just enough attitude, and he looks pretty realistic in the grand scheme of things. Nothing fanciful or cartoonish like the later 86 Dreadnoks, he is really grounded. Knee-high boots, blue jeans, and a black leather vest with a skull necklace to top it all off. It looks pretty solid. I like his head sculpt especially, with the burnout bandana in the Cyclops-style visor. I probably would have went with Oakley's, but hey, maybe he's a big fan of the X-Men. Just straight up a grounded, Easy Rider style 60s to 70s biker. He looks like he'd be causing trouble at a Rolling Stones concert or getting into a fight with John and Ponch in an episode of Chips. Plus, with the chops and mustache combo, he does look like he'd be in the running for first place at a Lemmy lookalike contest. Keeping with the status quo of Joe's at the time, he comes with two accessories, a backpack and a weapon. However, instead of having a rifle or a pistol or any kind of standard weapon, he has a tool, and his tool of choice is an acetylene torch, hence his stage name. It's kind of interesting. Most of the Dreadnoks, bar a couple like Zartan with his hairdryer ray gun, don't have standard weaponry. Instead, they have either tools or kit-bashed weapons like ones you'd see in Fallout. The torch is really well sculpted, and it's cast in a great shade of silver. This adds a little bit of realism and grounding to it, as well as some personality. Like, Torch is not only the guy who busts open safes and locks for the Dreadnoks, but he also does the detail work for their bikes. Next up on the police lineup is Buzzer, and Buzzer's probably my favorite of the gang. Not only do I think he has the best figure overall, but he has the most personality. So much is conveyed with that head sculpt alone. He looks like a complete and total scumbag, alright? He is the scummiest and sleaziest of the crew, and you can tell by that greasy little ponytail, and the fact that he wears his shades indoors. And that scumfuckery is also kind of backed up by his bio, but we'll get to that later. Right now, we're just focusing on the toy, and I think this toy is one of the best. I think he is the best of the Dreadnoks, but I also think he's one of the best figures in 1985. Now, granted, that is some really, really stiff competition. 1985 saw the debut of Airtight, Bazooka, Alpine, Flint, Shipwreck, Lady J, tons more. And the one thing that all these figures have in common is the fact that they have amazing sculpted and painted detail work. Rewinding all the way back to 1982, we can take a look at the individual G.I. Joe figures of this time and see the sculpt and detail work, while charismatic, is a little shallow. It leaves a little bit to be desired, and you can see where literal corners were cut, with reused head sculpts, as well as the fact that Snake Eyes is completely cast in black plastic, so he could save on the paint budget and give it to Stalker so we could see his amazing mustache. Oh, also his camo. The camo is very important too. But with each subsequent year, not only would the budget improve, but so would the sculpt and detail work as well. And that would culminate by 1985 in some amazingly charismatic and expressive figures. The Dreadnoks especially are absolutely covered in characterful detail work, and Buzzer is no exception. We can see he's got tons of Stolen Valor medals, a bandolier of grenades, a skull and crossbones belt buckle, and a cameo-style codpiece. Maybe him and Darklon hang out and share fashion advice.
Tell your brother, your sister, and your mama too, 'cause we're about to throw down, and you know just what to do.
Buzzer also has tons of paint to pick out these little details, like silver on the medals, the belt buckle, and his sweet shades, green for the grenades, and an awesome tampograph tattoo on his left bicep. It's a little hard to decipher. It looks a bit like a snake with a dagger through it, but it's kind of hard to tell, and that doesn't help with the fact that it's really easy to damage after 40 plus years. It's very much an any port in a storm style tattoo. All right, we're gonna go off track real quick into Michael Ramble's time, and we're gonna talk about Doctor Who. Big surprise there. But John Pertwee, the actor who played the third Doctor, the one that dresses like Austin Powers, he actually had a really similar tattoo to this in real life. He got it when he was blackout drunk in a port in a storm in World War II, and it was a snake with a knife going through it. And in a couple episodes of Doctor Who, you can actually see this tattoo. And it's kind of interesting, the way the story writers kind of incorporated it into the canon was that this snake tattoo was the symbol of renegade Time Lords who had been exiled by Gallifrey. I don't know, it's kind of a cool detail. It's almost undeservedly badass for such a notorious fuddy-duddy like the Doctor, but also, the third Doctor is the biggest badass of them all. He's a man of action. He gets into fights like all the time. He gets arrested. He gets sent to the moon for being part of the peace party. Like, he's pretty damn cool. And John Pertwee was a cool guy in real life, too. He was a bit of a notorious goofus, but he did back it up with being a badass Navy sailor. And, he also opened a burger joint, too, which is pretty rad. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the Dreadnoks. Okay, so anyway, while Buzzer has some of the best painted and sculpted detail of the crew, I think he also has some of the best accessories of the crew. Not only are they well sculpted and well detailed, but he also has more than the average Joe of the time. He's got a backpack with a removable gas can, a chain-mounted, quote, nunchaku axe. I guess he's been watching Ninja 3: The Domination.
The Ninja Empire is evil. I have to reform the Ninja Empire. That is why I took away the Golden Ninja Warrior.
And a pistol grip chainsaw. These are pretty badass. I like them a lot. They're really diverse, really charismatic, and I do think they're what makes him my favorite Dreadnok. Well, one thing really does make him my favorite Dreadnok. The fact that he looks like Dale Gribble. That puts him well over the edge.
Pocket sand.
Last up in the paddy wagon is probably my least favorite Dreadnok, Ripper. And while Ripper is my least favorite, that isn't to say he's bad. He is actually a really good figure. He's still absolutely covered in amazing sculpted and painted detail work. However, he is the most prone to wear of the original three Dreadnoks. All three of the Dreadnoks are really prone to paint scuffs, paint damage, and paint wear, and Ripper really suffers the most of the three because a lot of his sculpted detail work is picked out in fragile gold paint. This gold paint is really similar to the silver paint that we see on the Viper Glider pilot as well as Cobra Commander's faceplate. It's really prone to rubbing off and leaving bare plastic underneath, making all the amazing detail work sculpted on look really ugly, particularly the gold painted armband, the silver painted necklace, as well as all of the rings. I bet you didn't notice he had rings. It's an amazing sculpted detail that just doesn't stand the test of time, unfortunately. Add on to that, he has a black painted mohawk and bright red glasses that are also large, square, and prone to paint scratches, and you have one of the most difficult figures in the early years to find in nice condition. Now that said, even if he was 100% case fresh, I'm not 100% sold on his look. The blue jeans and camo crop top is certainly a choice. It's a questionable one for sure. Like, I question if he's colorblind, because I don't think a gay man would be caught dead wearing this.
Where'd you get that shirt?
I don't know. Came out of the closet.
And much like his fashion sense, his accessories leave a lot to be desired. His main tool of choice are a set of hydraulic cutters, or hydraulic spreaders. I'm sure you can imagine it either way. Jaws of life in layman's terms. And while this is a good idea in concept and on paper, it's not really well executed, considering the spreaders, well, they don't spread. It's really awkward for him to hold, he doesn't hold it well, it limits his articulation, it's just a dud of an accessory. What's not a dud is his alternate weapon, which is just straight up a rifle with a halberd axe head attached to it. It's pretty heavy metal, it's really kick-ass, so I gotta give him props for that. Having your villains be outlaws is instant characterization. It's a recognizable archetype, and it has a little bit of extra counterculture edge when you take into account that the Dreadnoks are all bikers. Like I said, they look like Hell's Angel rejects and burnouts from the 60s and 70s. But G.I. Joe figure designer Ron Rudat definitely took some inspiration from real-life motorcycle clubs when creating Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch, but he also took influence from one other notable source, and that is Mad Max. Rudat is definitely the type of creative that wears his influences on his sleeve, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I respect it quite a bit. And he's made no secret that the Joes and Cobras he worked on were influenced by pulp adventure art, spy thrillers, action movies, and other interesting aspects of militaria. However, I think there's a little bit of confusion in the fandom at large in regards to Rudat's statement about being influenced by Mad Max. 99% of the time when somebody says they love Mad Max or are influenced by it, the first thing you think of isn't Mad Max 1 from 1979, it's Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. And why wouldn't you think of The Road Warrior? It's one of the best films ever made. George Miller's strange mind was working on full turbo blast, taking all of his skills and all of his filmmaking knowledge to make an amazing spectacle. Full of amazing action set pieces and characterful world building, this film literally changed the genre. It's one of the most influential movies out there. So why wouldn't you think that's where the Dreadnoks come from? But I would argue that Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch with their grounded 1%er look are much more akin to the bikers we see in the original 1979 Mad Max. They look like they'd be riding the roads with Toe Cutter and Knight Rider, rather than hanging out in Lord Humongous and his Dogs of War. That's where Xandar and Zorana have been hanging out after all. I think collectively we've kind of forgotten about Mad Max's grindhouse roots, with that first movie being about a renegade cop taking down bikers who killed his wife and family in the near apocalypse, as opposed to the insane post-apocalyptic odyssey of ultraviolence in the following movies. The original Mad Max from '79 is much more akin to a vigilante Charles Bronson movie like Mr. Majestic or Death Wish.
We're still in the fucking car. What's it to you?
It's my car. Now you're gonna die.
Fatality.
And outside of the overall biker aesthetic, you can also see the influence of Mad Max in the Dreadnok's bios, as all of them have some grounding in Australia or Australian culture. Torch is from New South Wales, Botany Bay specifically, and Ripper is from the territory of Tasmania. However, Buzzer is not a native to Australia. Both Torch and Ripper are described as hardened career criminals who've basically spent all of their lives on the bottom rungs of society. Torch picked up some skills going from place to place as a vagrant and working in the Merchant Marines, whereas Ripper was just a career criminal from the get-go. He never spent a day outside of Johnny Law's purview. Buzzer is distinct in that he is a British academic, and it's implied that he was pretty posh and upper class, as he went down to the Australian outback to study countercultures and outlaws for a sociology degree at Cambridge. There he spent enough time in the rough Australian outback that he became part of the biker scene there and started joining a few motorcycle clubs as they appealed to his, quote, radical left-leaning ideology. Now, they don't actually say in his bio or the Marvel Comics, or especially not the Sunbow cartoon, what his ideology is, but we can assume he's one of those guys that says he's a Marxist to pick up chicks at the coffee shop and then goes and buys a new iPhone. We all know this guy. He's a total prick. So, I don't know, Buzzer's some sort of anarcho-militant extremist, Marxist, something or other.
Now, for God's sake, don't go losing your heads and using them, that's all.
Why not, Mike? Yeah, come on. Robin Hood, barter mine half. Those bank clerks didn't have to become bank clerks. They knew the risks when they took the job. Let's just get in there and let them have it.
We can't do that, Rick. If we do that, there's a very slight chance that they'll discover these are water pistols.
Oh, brilliant, Mike!
This guy's absolutely insufferable at parties, okay? If Buzzer was written today, he'd be the kind of guy that would go to China or Cuba to live stream and talk about how awesome collectivism is, all while being in his penthouse wearing thousands of dollars in designer clothes. Now, any and all character outlined in Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch's bio is either completely ignored or sanded down in adaptation. Whether that's the Marvel Comics or the Sunbow cartoon especially, they're just straight up goons. We can't say that word anymore thanks to Twitter. They're straight up stooges. That's right, stooges. Whether that's the Three or Iggy Pop's, you decide.
Now, you've worked together sort of record-wise, haven't you?
Yeah. And on the slide, too.
I know.
In most continuities, the Dreadnoks are bikers led by Zartan and his family, and they do odd jobs for Cobra. You know, they rough up small businesses, they lie, they cheat, they steal, they beat up old ladies like Slim Pickens' gang from Blazing Saddles, and then they get beat up by the Joes in return while the Cobra Vipers do the actual work of world domination. In the original Sunbow cartoon from the 80s, the Dreadnoks really lean towards the comedic, with Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch being chronic goobers and Zartan being the only one among them with 2 brain cells to rub together at any given time. Admittedly, they're really, really silly, but the original Sunbow cartoon is really silly, so it fits right in. It's fun, it's goofy, it's full of a lot of charisma, and the Dreadnoks just add to it. Plus, it's pretty funny to see them just running the road, shaking down people for petty cash, and then being blasted off into space to take control of a satellite for Cobra. It just depends on the episode. There's always a wacky adventure in store for them. Though I wouldn't be a real G.I. Joe fan if I didn't mention their best bout of buffoonery. One of the most memorable episodes of the original Sunbow cartoon, the fan favorite, Cold Slither. In this bizarre adventure, Cobra Commander is broke as a joke. After tons of failed world domination attempts and G.I. Joe raids, he's got nothing. He's so deep in the hole that Tomax and Zaymot start repossessing Cobra weapons and vehicles to sell to Iran, North Korea, Cuba, the guy next door, anybody. Anyone who's got cash, they're willing to take it, because Cobra Commander is shit out of luck. Low on options and a lot of creditors to pay off, Cobra Commander gathers his crew. He gathers his boys, Destro, Firefly, and Baroness, to take him down to Louisiana. There he meets the Bayou Hobbit crime boss, Stinky, and asks him for a small loan of $1 million. When the deal goes south, Cobra Commander grabs the cash, grabs his crew, and escapes Bayou Hobbiton. On the run, he goes deeper and deeper into the swamps until he finds Zartan in the Dreadnoks clubhouse. Then and there, our intrepid hero Cobra Commander hatches his most ingenious scheme yet. He'll form a band. The plan is simple. Rock out, film a music video, get a smash hit, get laid, get rich, and take over the world. 10 out of 10, no notes. Airtight plan. And to help out with that last part of taking over the world, Cobra Commander is going to use backmasking to put subliminal messages into his music, thus hypnotizing the population. I guess Tipper Gore was right. There were evil messages in rock music. It just happened to be the music coming from Cobra, not Dee Snider. I kind of imagine Cobra Commander discovered backmasking by being a huge fan of Zepp, or probably the Beatles, actually. Like, he just had a record player and a copy of the White Album and was like, Revolution number 9's already creepy, but check this out, Destro, and he just starts playing it backwards. Instead of taking inspiration from the old man rock that he likes, Cobra Commander took Zartan, Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch and fashioned them into the ultimate glam metal cock rock band of their time. Cold Slither. From there, some classic G.I. Joe shenanigans ensue as Cobra Commander plays Phil Spector, while Cold Slither quite literally tears up the charts with their one song, Cold Slither, presumably from their album, Cold Slither, and they begin their American Carnage US tour. Zartan, Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch are definitely getting up to some G.G. Allen antics on stage, while Cobra Commander's plan of using subliminal messages to hypnotize the public works, and he takes the world hostage through the power of rock and roll. This is everything that Tipper Gore was afraid of. The evil powers of rock and roll extend even to the G.I. Joe headquarters, as Shipwreck and some of the other Joes are hypnotized by the heavy metal riffs of Cold Slither, and they buy tickets to their concert. How evil. On one side, you've got Cobra Commander taking over the world through heavy metal riffs, and on the other, you've got evangelicals breaking records in half like it's rock, it's your decision.
And listen to these by the rock group AC/DC. Rock and Roll Damnation, Let There Be Rock, Highway to Hell, and this is my favorite right here. Hell ain't a bad place to be.
To put an end to the absolute pandemonium, G.I. Joe decides to take decisive action. They assemble an elite strike team consisting of Lady J, Covergirl, and Scarlet to infiltrate the concert. There they'll be disguised as scantily clad, drunk groupies. Genius. This has to be one of the most absolutely gonzo, ridiculous, and just fun premises for a G.I. Joe adventure ever. And no, we don't get to see Lady J's massive tactical distractions on full display. They just beat the shit out of everyone and throw Cobra Commander through a window, as you do. They undo the brainwashing, and everybody kind of realizes that Cold Slither's kind of lame. And thus, G.I. Joe killed hair metal years before Nirvana did. But let's be real here. Metal never dies. And that's proven by the fact that in real life, Hasbro actually gathered a group of real metal musicians to put out an album as Cold Slither. And these aren't like session musicians, these are real, true blue metalheads who played with KMFDM, Impaled, and Exhumed. This is such a wonderful idea. Like, well and truly, I know, right? Wonder and whimsy is how I describe metal. But truly, this is a great idea. It's so fun, and it just really speaks to what makes the original Sunbow run of G.I. Joe iconic. There's so many goofy, silly ideas that are played in full earnest, and Cold Slither is the best among them. I think it's the commitment to earnesty that we see in the early years of G.I. Joe that make it so iconic all these years later. The Dreadnoks being a group of rude, crude bikers from Australia that love grape soda and chocolate donuts is a silly idea on its face, but it's played straight. Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch are fan favorites for good reason. They expand the world of G.I. Joe without going overboard. Look, I love the Star Brigade, the Eco Warriors especially, and the DEF, but I admit, sometimes it's a bridge too far. They're a little too silly, they're a little too goofy, and I can see why some Joe fans don't like them. But the Dreadnoks are just on that edge. They're just strange and interesting enough to really expand the world of G.I. Joe without making it a total pantomime farce. And Joe fans do collect just the Dreadnoks. They're kind of the collection within the collection, much like the bounty hunters from Star Wars, though the further you get on with the Dreadnok collection, the sillier they do get admittedly. After all, Xandar and Zorana do look like warriors from the waist or extras from a Frankie Goes to Hollywood music video, and I'll be fair, I like them because of that. Zorana especially. But we'll get to Xandar, Zorana, Road Pig, Zanya, all those cats another day. Until then, Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch will be tearing up the roads across America, causing trouble, doing petty crimes, just being an overall nuisance. It'll take one true hero to take them down. A real American hero. And no, it's not G.I. Joe. If you're in trouble, and if you can find them, then maybe you can call Mr. T.